Hey everybody, welcome to the newest episode of Capital of Combat. I'm Hakeem Branch.
I'm Rob Jarrell.
And today we're going to be talking about Bellator 97 from July 31st. We're going to be talking about UFC163 from Saturday, August 3rd, and also NBC Fight Night from the same night, August 3rd.
Alright, now with Bellator 97, the main event was King Mo Lawal versus Jacob Noe. King Mo been trying to make a statement ever since his loss to Emmanuel Newton in the previous Bellator tournament. So he's been coming out and destroying people lately.
Yeah, he retired Seth Petrozelli at the last Bellator with a very nice right hand from standing position to a falling Seth Petrozelli. Knocked him out unconscious. Petrozelli retired immediately afterwards, and King Mo was back on the grind, ready to go again against Jacob Noe. And in this fight, he really wanted to showcase the wrestling ability that he had, being that he said post-fight he wanted to make a stand for the Olympic Committee, considering taking wrestling off of the Olympic list of events.
That's right, and a statement he made, he just overpowered Jacob. Jacob's not really known for his wrestling, and he made it known. I'm talking about the power, the technique, the leverage that he got, and he also displayed some great ground and pound during the match.
Oh yeah, this was textbook ground and pound. This is the type of ground and pound that you want to see from a competitor when you see an MMA match go to the ground. He shot the great double legs, he did a couple single legs, but as soon as he got down, every punch he threw looked like he had intentions to hurt or finish Noe. And it grinded him down, wore him out. You could see him in the corner between rounds, and it looked like he was really gasping for air and was worn out from all the pressure that Mo was taking on him. And also, he landed some great knees when Noe tried to get back up off from the ground when he had him against the cage, and that really took a toll on him to get the finish at the end of the fight.
Which he did get, and that was, you can't really beat a verbal submission. He was taking some great ground and pound. All his shots were measured, all his shots were vicious, and Jacob Noe just couldn't handle it anymore. And the referee just stepped in, called it a night.
Alright, so with that happening, King Mo is now in place for a title shot, and we'll see what happens to him from there. Alright, so let's move on to UFC 163. We're going to talk about the Phil Davis Lyoto Machida fight, and also the Jose Aldo Chan Sung Jung fight.
Now with Phil Davis Lyoto Machida, Phil Davis, who's a great wrestler, I thought was the underdog against Lyoto Machida. Lyoto Machida is one of the few fighters in UFC and in MMA who mixes jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and traditional karate.
Yeah. And I texted Rob before this fight was going on. I was like, there's no way Machida is going to lose a decision in Brazil. And what we're going to do now is talk about how he lost the decision in Brazil. Well, you want to start off, Rob?
Alright, now Machida has great defense. He is not an easy man to take down, and he always keeps his hand moving and his feet moving. So when you move, he moves, and his hands are always up. Phil couldn't really find a place for his punches, but the one place he did have success was the takedowns.
Oh yeah, he had a great takedown at the end of round 1, another one at the end of round 2, and when he got down there, he was busy once again, just like we talked about from the King Mo fight. When you get down on the ground, you gotta get busy. You gotta throw. He threw some nice knees down there. He threw a couple nice strikes. But another thing that he did was some great footwork. His footwork was pretty even with Machida. Machida was very methodical with his footwork. His placement was very simple, whereas Davis was taking a lot of extra steps. He was finding some good angles to get on Machida to land his strikes as well. Machida landed some good counters, but it really wasn't enough as far as activity-wise to really get that decision and sway the judges, especially when you're very particular in what you're looking for. And those takedowns were the catalyst to show the judges that Phil Davis was pushing the tempo. Phil Davis was trying to make the fight. And when you're talking about judging a fight, that is something a lot of judges look for. Is even though I think Machida landed probably the cleaner punches, Davis was busier, he was more active, and it looked like he was really trying to take the fight to Machida.
Yeah, that's what we call effective aggression. And the one good thing about Davis in the second round, with Machida being a left-handed fighter, he recognized that he had to get away from his power hand and outside his right foot. So a lot of the time you saw Phil Davis step, and try to go over the top with his left hand, which kind of put Lyoto Machida more on the defensive, and that's where he started to get a little bit more aggressive with his takedowns. So congrats to Phil Davis. It was a very close match. He was an underdog. I thought Lyoto Machida would pull it out with the decision. Not really a knockout, but anything can happen in the octagon.
Yeah, as long as you're getting hit in the mouth, anything can happen. Or if you're getting taken down, you've seen people get knocked out with slams. But when you're in combat, anything can happen. And that's what's going to lead us into this next fight. The main event, the title fight between Jose Aldo and Chan Sung Jung. This was the very definition of killer instinct. I mean, we had a very evenly pitched battle, even though Jose Aldo was clearly the person who was winning the fight. We saw the second that the Korean zombie Chan Sung Jung was injured, Jose Aldo jumped on him immediately and finished the fight. And that's what you're supposed to do when you're an elite level competitor and you see a weakness in your opponent.
Now see, Jose Aldo has great reflexes. I mean, as soon as he finds an opening, he responds. And as soon as he noticed that the Korean zombie's shoulder was out of place after an exchange, he attacked it immediately. At some point during the had him up against the cage, throwing three left kicks to that same shoulder. He wanted to make a statement. He wanted to let him know that there was no chance he was getting out this fight as a winner or even having a chance. And the Korean zombie just crumpled against the cage, tried to defend himself. The referee, Herb Dean, had to jump in because at that point it was over.
Oh yeah, and I mean, you got to give Chan Sung Jung a lot of credit. I mean, he tried to play it off. I mean, he tried to snap his shoulder back in place and keep going. That's the heart of a champion right there. He really showed that he wanted to win. But against the superiority of Jose Aldo, that's just not going to cut it. If he sees that you're hurt, he's going to finish you, and he's going to finish you quick. He's not going to play around. He's not going to try and let you get back into the fight. That second you slip, he makes you pay, and he makes you pay by ending the fight.
But there is a kudos to go out to the Korean zombie because, like his name, he always kept coming. And Jose Aldo not only had the physical advantages, but he had great reflexes, balance, and he is extremely strong because he was able to take down his competitor at will. So the wrestling, the stand-up, he's the full package. At 145, I don't see him being beat.
Oh, no, not at all. I mean, we had Frankie Edgar come down from 155, and he gave him a very good fight, but at the end, Jose Aldo showed his championship pedigree and pulled it out. So yeah, I don't think there's going to be anybody at 145 that's going to see this guy unless, you know, he gets bored and decides to do something crazy, or maybe he gets in another accident like he did before one of his last fights.
Right.
But we hope that doesn't happen. So I like to see him be dominant for many years to come.
Now, if he really wants to challenge, there is talks of him having trouble making weight, so he might move up to 155, where there's definitely a challenge with Ben Henderson, Anthony Pettis, and Gilbert Melendez.
Oh yeah, those guys are some killers at 155, and that would be a great matchup to see whether he can take on that extra size, especially the Gilbert Melendez and Ben Henderson. Those guys are some really big lightweights, and to see if they can use that physicality on Aldo would be a great, intriguing matchup.
But that's for the future. We're going to see what Dana White's going to have for Jose Aldo. My prediction, not much.
All right. Before we move on to that, I do want to send a shout out to Brian Stan, who stood in for Joe Rogan. The commentating last night was top notch. He did a great job stepping in for him. I actually liked it a little bit more. But that's all I got to say about that.
All right. Now we're going to move on to NBC Sports Fight Night. We had a few fights. Eddie Chambers' first fight at cruiserweight. He fought Thabiso Mchunu, the undefeated competitor from Africa, and there was also Curtis Stevens versus Saul Roman.
Yes, and in the Eddie Chambers fight, there was a lot of hype coming into this fight because Eddie Chambers was a career heavyweight. He was always a smaller heavyweight coming in the low 200s, and everyone said, hey, if Eddie Chambers went to cruiserweight, he could do a lot better down in cruiserweight with the smaller guys. They'd be more his size. He can use his speed. But as we saw last night, that wasn't quite the case. He seemed to be stuck in mud for the entire fight, and Mchunu really wasn't moving that much. What he was doing was he was standing on his back foot, waiting for Chambers to come in, and countering him with his straight left hand and right hook over the top. And it worked to perfection because he barely lost a round.
Yeah, Fast Eddie really isn't known as an aggressive fighter. He lets the fight come to him. He's got very, like his name, very fast hands. He's a great counterpuncher, but when he has to lead in this dance, it's not going to be very good for him. Like you said, Mchunu was countering him with his right hand, and Fast Eddie not being the normal aggressor, he was always reaching. So he got caught leaning in with the right hand. So every time he leaned in, he paid for it.
Yeah, and that's the basic thing you want to do when you're a fighter. You want to make your opponent make mistakes, and when he makes those mistakes, you make him pay for those mistakes. And Mchunu executed that to perfection last night. And also, Eddie Chambers didn't throw many combinations because of that. And he got some great advice from his corner. He just wasn't able to execute it in the ring, which was to move towards his left to Mchunu's right to get away from that power left hand and work the body, hit the arms of Mchunu, so he was just hitting anything, and to let his hands go so he have less opportunities for Mchunu to counter him. But being in there is a little different than hearing the instructions from the corner, and he might have felt the power of Mchunu and not wanted to do that, leaving himself open to get countered.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Hopefully he finds his rhythm in this weight class. He may move back up where he would have the advantage in speed, but he's kind of in that middle right now. So I hope he can go back to the drawing board and find some success in this weight class or back at heavyweight.
Yeah, he's really wants that rematch with Thomas Adamek where he tore his bicep during the fight and still hung in the fight and almost won the fight. But it looks like Adamek is on the big things. He fought in the middle fight of that card. It really wasn't that eventful. He fought Dominic Gwynn, who's a guy who you get rounds against, not really showing up to be a competitor, but someone to, keep busy type of opponent. And he served his purpose last night. So let's talk about the main event, because there were absolute fireworks in the main event.
No, there was one firework, and it came from Curtis Stevens. This man had his fight. Now, if you don't know Curtis Stevens, he's been moving down from light heavyweight to super middleweight, where he's had moderate success, but he kind of got stuck in mud. But it looks like he found a place at 160. And at 160, he has been dominant. Of his last four fights, only one came out of the first round, and that was a decision against Derek Finlay. The rest, first round knockouts.
Oh yeah, and this was no different. He fought Saul Roman, and Roman was coming up from 154, which was junior middleweight. So he was a smaller guy in general, but just looking at Curtis Stevens, you could just see that he was just huge. I mean, his shoulders were massive.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and he used that physicality. He put Roman against the ropes, hit him with some crisp left hooks and right hands, and had him buzz early, dropped him with a nice left hook, and then finished him with a downright scorcher of a left hook, which put Roman on his back for good.
Yeah, I don't even think he got up after the 10 count. He just had to go to sleep. Napping in the middle of the ring, hey, I can't blame him. Curtis Stevens has lately been very measured in his approach with his counterpunching. It's been very crisp, and he's been able to get knockouts that way. This one, he recognized that he was the smallest man. Roman was a smaller man. He recognized he was a smaller man, and he just bullied him. Roman came out to the middle of the ring and quickly found himself against the ropes. So at that point, it was nothing but hooks, right hands, and the last one found his mark. So, but that's all we have for you today. Please stay tuned, leave a comment, please subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.
My demons are in a rage. Keep thinking that it's a game. I kick rhyme hurricane. I told them I don't play. I'm liquid.
Black Street Fighter.